Alrighty. I am aware that I am between you and adult beverages or other forms of refreshment. So I will try to make it as lively as possible. My name is Jay Lee, and I served as your 2012 AAFP NCSC, now NCCL convener, and I am the immediate past president of the California Academy of Family Physicians, otherwise known as the President-Eject. And what I wanted to talk about is legacy. And the reason why legacy is really important right now is because we have a historic opportunity as a community of family physicians to make a difference for the health of America, to put the health back in healthcare, to move from population medicine to population health, to achieve health equity. We're having that conversation at this meeting, and I can assure you this is happening across not only my state in California, but in every nook and cranny of this country. So before we talk about legacy, I figured I should look it up and get a sense of what it means. And so it's got several different definitions when you look in the dictionary. Number one, it's a noun, an amount of money or property left to someone in a will. So I don't think that's the legacy that we're talking about. Two, it's a thing handed down by a predecessor. Okay, we're getting a little closer, right? We have this 26-year legacy at this meeting. But really the legacy that I think we're struggling with most in healthcare is the last one. Denoting software or hardware that has been suspended but is difficult to replace because of its wide use. What do I mean by that? This is the no-does slide. What we're dealing with is this fee-for-service, volume-based, and transactional system, broken system that we all exist in. And there are perverse legacy-driven incentives for what gets paid for that maintain the status quo. Now, one of my day jobs is, yes, I have multiple hats in my day job, but one of my day jobs is to lead practice transformation for 32 practices in Southern California. And man, that has used a completely different part of my brain than what it takes for me to get through a half day to see patients. And let me tell you, even though we're 70% capped in my group, 30% fee for service, we're still paying on some of these fee for service mentality or productivity. And what is that doing? It's burning our doctors out. Because what we did is we added technology to speed up. We added technology to amplify whatever defects were in the system to begin with. And in the worst cases, we sped up and amplified whatever defects were in there to begin with, and we're still on the 15-minute visit model. Right? So clearly, we need to move and we need to transform. And a lot of that transformation process, for me, is about involving people in a dialogue and visioning about the future. And how can we move the legacy from the current state to that future state? If you wrote this in your personal statement, call me. We need to talk. When I decided to enter or apply for medical school, a lot of my background in health was working for a non-governmental organization in post-war El Salvador. I was about 20 pounds lighter than I am now, and my hair was down to my shoulders, and I wore Birkenstocks, and kind of worked for this NGO, and did everything that I could with the minimal training that I had. And so my vision for what it was to be a doctor was not this. My vision was about helping community, helping people, meeting people where they are, and creating health. Because it should be, that should be the currency, it's not an RVU. In 2012, G. Gale Stevens and I got the memo that we should both wear tan suits. And how many of you know who G. Gale Stevens is? A handful of folks. So I would call G. Gale Stevens the OG of the family medicine revolution, meaning he was the one who really talked about family medicine as counterculture. Because if you look at the history of our specialty came out of, it was a backlash against sort of the over-specialization of healthcare. And it was a return to the whole person and the community. And these are things that, I had the great honor of having G. Gale be our speaker at the 2012 NCSC at the time. And he said he had this beautiful Southern way of being able to distill down what it is that we do as family physicians. And he said three things. He said, number one, it's about being there. You can't be there if your screen is your patient. Right? You can't fake being there. You need to create that. You need to own it. You need to be there. You need to create some gravity to that. The second thing he said was, you got to give it down. And not because, I tell my kid, you have to say I'm sorry, and he just goes, I'm sorry, and he walks away from the sibling. But you got to give it down in a way that makes the patient think that you're there for them. And then the third thing that he said was, you got to know the difference between your job and your work. My job is to close charts. My job is to manage an inbox. My job is to refill prescriptions. My work is what happened to me on Monday. I'm humming along, seeing patients that I know real well, and I walk in the door, and my patient's crying. And there's no CPT code for the weight of weighing tissue papers, as a way of getting reimbursed. There's none of that. There's no E&M code for the amount of surface area of hand contact that I make with the patient. Right? There's no code for hugging the patient or just being present. Yes, it derailed my afternoon, but man, that gave me joy to be there for my patient, to give it to him, and to know the difference between job and work. And yes, I ended up charting at night, but who cares? Well, we gotta get that better. We will. So, G. Gale would say we must question, we must resist, we must resist, we must re-engineer. Now, I'm infusing a little bit of my personality into this now, because I think it goes beyond resistance. We need to actually start thinking about re-engineering the system. And we have the skill sets and the know-how and the ability to dialogue with people in ways that I don't think our specialty colleagues necessarily have in spades. We must become change agents. And that's really what this meeting is about. It's learning how to be a change agent. When I was a medical student, in my last year of medical school, I was very active in AMSA, and it was the year of the Enron crisis. And we went to Houston, and we had a rally in front of the Enron building, a Healthcare for All rally. And I took my shirt off. I was in much better shape back then. And I wrote in Sharpie on my chest, Healthcare for All. And I walked down the street with a bunch of other people protesting to say, we need to have healthcare for all. And now when I think about that period of time, it felt good to be out there, bare-chested, with handwritten stuff on my chest, but what did it really accomplish? I ended up on a local news affiliate that's still analog. I probably need to digitize it and put it on YouTube or something. But that's not becoming a change agent. A change agent is taking ideas and feelings in your heart and putting them on paper and having colleagues give you feedback about whether or not that makes sense. And that's really what this meeting is about, is learning how to become that change agent. Because we really need to become the leaders our healthcare system needs us to be. So that gets us to this question of physics. And how do we create force? Because the vector of healthcare is in that volume-based transactional system that we all hate and we also need because we need to feed our families, etc. And the way to change a vector is to create sufficient force to move it in a different way. And the way you do that is you get your mass, right? 120,000, what is it now? 124,900 numbers. 1 in 4 medical students. And you amplify. And what I mean by amplify, because it's not acceleration, it's amplification. It's taking every single voice here and sharing your story. Going to social media and saying, you will not close down that residency program in New York. You will not close down that residency program in Bakersfield because the community needs it. And not letting others push us around anymore. So it does get down to moving us towards, and Berwick actually, when I was making these slides, I don't think the Era 3 article from JAMA came out yet. But if you recall from that, it's sort of the project plan for how to achieve AAA plus 1. It talks about value, patient experience, population health, and joy in practice. And I would argue that if you don't have joy in practice, you can't add triple aim to the equation. You've got to have joy in practice, and out of that springs these other things. I know I do a better job when I've gotten sleep, when I have had coffee, when I've had food to eat, when I've had time to spend with my family. I'm a better doctor. I can't worry about metrics if I don't have any of those other things. Whoops. And joy in practice is really the anti-physician burnout. So what I would say about that is no one at CMS, no one at United Healthcare, no one at Anthem, no one at any of the payers is responsible for your joy. You have that responsibility. You need to own that. So, find your coaches, find your mentors. This is a great place for that. I'm looking around the audience and I see many people I've had that dialogue with over the years. This is my 10th year being here. And then, there is a framework for how to change, and you all can look at the Bodenheimer blocks because they're not very well projected there. But you all know that article. It came out in Annals. So, last few slides here. I think there's just some things. This is not necessarily a roadmap, but these are things that I think we need to think about. And I think it's how do we define payment for value, and how do we define it in a way that matters for primary care and matters for our patients. I had a patient tell me once on a day that I was very hurried and I was trying to get through the health maintenance piece, who said, "Doctor, I'm not a checklist." And that came from a great place because we have a great relationship. But doctor, I'm not a checklist. Have we checklisted the heck out of what we do, right, to provide care? So how do we redefine productivity? And how do we look at touch points instead of office visits? How do we pay for what matters in primary care? Access, continuity, coordination of care. I think some of that has to do with data analytics. We need to do a better job. We need to advance that field because without data, it's hard to make decisions. And without data, you can actually make bad decisions. And even with data, you can still make bad decisions. But the science of how we use data is going to matter. And again, it's going to get us from population medicine to population health. And I do think that the data needs to support our ability to impact social determinants of health. And there was at least one resolution this afternoon that I heard was going to be contributing to that conversation. I love digital health, I love technology, but for the life of me, I can't get Epic to take data from someone's Fitbit and incorporate it into their chart because we don't have interoperability. And the truth is, patients own more data than we do at this point because they've got wearables. They've got things that they're keeping track of. So how do we make that more efficient? And then I think the other piece of this is the WAC, the work after clinic, or the work ethics clinic, that all of us are doing. When I look at my data for when I'm logging into Epic to do charting, it's late at night or early in the morning. And our goal in my medical group, where we're leading transformation, because we have data, we're going to cut the whack in half. Our goal is to whack the whack. Because it makes a difference whether you get to the 8 o'clock yoga class or the 6 o'clock yoga class after work. Your quality of life is going to be different. Right? And then if you don't like yoga, I'm sorry, but there are yoga classes that can help you with that. And then the last piece, and I think this is where the magic sauce is, it's physician leadership. Because I think the vector is not going to move unless we are at the table and not on the menu, right? And I think there was kind of a generational period in the 90s where all of us were coming out of this era of DRGs and trying to cut back on the financial costs of what we do. And people just said, managed care, fine, or not fine, but just leave me alone. Let me take care of my patients. And we did that sort of collectively, as not just family docs, but I think collectively as a whole. And then what ended up happening, I think, was really when we started to see some perverse incentives with the RUC and all this stuff that we are now living with now. And with MACRA, we have an opportunity to say, hell no, that's not happening again. And I know that the Academy is at the table and not on the menu on this. So last 2 slides. I think there's 4 steps here that we have going forward. Number 1 is realize yourself. And this is a place to do that. It's to realize who you are. 2 is showing up. And that means not showing up because someone told you to or someone said, hey, there's free barbecue. We'll pay for your barbecue if you go to Kansas City. Was that truthfully the reason we're here the first time? But showing up in a way that where you're pissed and you get up at the microphone and you speak your mind. You're not pissed at the people at the reference committee, but you're pissed about something, right? And you need to speak up. 3, and I think this is the really challenging one, it's occupying the ground. It's not writing healthcare for all on your chest and running down the street in front of Enron. It's doing it in a meaningful way, having the conversations that you need to, leveraging the relationships that you have, creating mass to create force, to cause change to happen. And then you can start talking about changing the world. We often go to step 4, and then we get burned out because we go, well, no one listened to me. I cared. No one listened. But we have to go through some of these transformational steps first in order for us to be effective change agents. So we talk about legacy a lot at my workplace because there's a majority group that joined the larger group and they like to call themselves legacy, and it pisses me off that they call themselves legacy. So my way of getting back at them is to repeatedly say this in meetings to agitate. And what I say is, because they always look back at the legacy of what we did when we were, this group. It's probably easy for you to look it up where I work, but I won't say it because we're on Facebook. But the only legacy that matters is the one we're building right now. I don't care about the legacy of when the group was a 40-physician group. We are who we are today. And I would say the same is true for our specialty. Although I would say we need to go back to our legacy of, being the resistors, being the ones who are counterculture and who want to create a family medicine revolution.